It's time to make carnitas, which are Mexican pulled pork. Now, traditionally, they take hunks of pork and deep fry them in gallons and gallons of lard or cooking oil, something we are obviously not going to do at home. So we're going to start by braising a pork butt or pork shoulder. So what we're going to do now is bring Julia in, and we're going to use braised pork, and that little bit of liquid is actually going to be a big plus because we're going to make a sauce out of it, and that's going to be one of our secret ingredients. So that's the secret of braising.
Yep.
You get a sauce, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So as you said, we're going to start with pork Boston butt, and this is about 3.5 to 4 pounds. And we tried, after making this a lot of times, trimming it a lot, getting all the fat off and trimming it little or none. And what you want to do is just trim it a little.
You're taking the easy way?
Yeah, I imagine
This is the first. This
Nice.
is the easy way.
So what you want to do is cut it into pieces, about 2-inch cubes.
So this is a boneless pork shoulder
Yes.
or butt.
Yep. As I go, I'm going to cut out any big pockets of fat, but leave most of it in there. And there's a little pocket of fat. I'm just going to trim it out.
Now, we should also point out, I just spoke about connective tissue. You can see there's a lot of connective tissue in this cut, and that's why you have to cook it a fair amount of time and let that stuff melt.
That's right.
By the way, speaking of fat, I had this great little letter from one of our viewers. It says, a treat to have a meat dish that had some fat.
Yes.
Well, I like this. We don't get many letters like this.
Right.
No matter how many ways a person varies in the seasoning of chicken breast and pork tenderloin and other lean cuts, they just don't have the depth of flavor that fat gives.
I agree.
Oh, look at this person,
I
sensible.
agree.
Yeah.
All right, finish cutting this into big cubes. Again, they're about 2 inches or so. They're going to braise for quite a while, so they're going to get nice and tender. We're going to put them right in the pot. Now, of course, the braising liquid is really flavorful. We're going to do that with classic Mexican spices. This is oregano. This is about a teaspoon of Mexican oregano, a little different than Italian oregano.
Which they would traditionally use in carnitas.
That's right.
So.
About a teaspoon of cumin, teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of black pepper, bay leaves, 2 bay leaves, 2 tablespoons of lime juice, small onion cut in half. We're going to add a little bit of water and a little bit of orange juice. Now, orange, usually they use sour or bitter oranges. Really hard to find, so we're going to use a combination of the lime juice and the orange. The thing about the orange is, in the sauce, the seeds, they get lost in there and you get one in your taco, not so tasty. So we're going to juice it first, then pick out all the seeds, and then add the spent halves, because the zest really imparts a good amount of flavor to the braising liquid. These look like nice seedless oranges, so maybe we're safe. We're gonna add the spent orange halves and the orange juice, and usually you get about 1/3 of a cup of orange juice, and a measly amount of water. This is just 2 cups. Now, usually when you think of braising like a pot roast, you add a good amount of liquid, a quart or more. But really, when we kept braising it, all that flavor's in the sauce, and you don't want sauce on carnitas, so we're gonna have to reduce it down later. So you wanna start with a minimal amount just to get it going.
So actually, you're looking not to create a sauce so much as really something that'll be a glaze.
That's right.
Okay.
So we're just gonna stir this around, get those spices down into the water, and then bring it up to a simmer and put it in a 300-degree oven, much like any other braise, a stew or a pot roast or anything.
So I noticed you didn't saute the meat first, which is typical for a braise. So,
That's right.
So how come?
Yeah, well, no, we tried it. It didn't impart that much more flavor to the braise, because at the end we are gonna reduce that sauce down and we're gonna get those crispy edges through broiling. So like most braises, you wanna bring it to a simmer and then throw it in the oven. It gives it a little head start, otherwise it takes a while to come up to a simmer on its own in the oven. I'm just gonna throw the lid on it so it happens a little faster. All right, so we've got it up to a nice simmer. I'm gonna turn it off and we're gonna put it in a 300-degree oven. That pork's gonna take about 2 hours to cook, and halfway through I'm gonna flip the meat over. All right, so it's been about 2 hours. We'll check this pork. And of course, we're looking for fork tender. And the easiest way to tell fork tender is to use a fork.
Brilliant.
I know, but what you're looking for is that a fork really can break apart the meat easily, and you can insert it and the fork falls right back out pretty simply.
By the way, if the pork isn't done, we have a little clip here to show you that if the pork isn't done, this is what it would look like when you put the fork in.
All right, I'm gonna let this sit for a second. I'm gonna turn the oven on broil. So we're gonna take the meat out. Oh, it does
Smell good, though.
Doesn't it? And in the meantime, I'm gonna get this sauce cranking. So we're gonna take the meat out, we're gonna take the solids out, the onion and the orange pieces, and we're gonna get that liquid really reduced down to a glaze that we can then toss with the pork, and that's where we're gonna get our flavor. All right, I think that's most of them. And we're gonna just continue to boil and reduce this sauce down to a nice glaze. And while that's happening, I'm gonna take these pieces of meat and just break them into slightly smaller pieces. Most of these I'll just cut in half. And that's going to simmer away for about 10-15 minutes till it gets to a nice glaze.
So, you know, if you boiled the meat or if even you barbecued the meat, you wouldn't get this small amount of intense liquid, which you're actually going to bring down to a glaze in the next 10 minutes. So the advantage of braising, especially in this case, is you're going to get a glaze out of that liquid. So we'll see you in about 10 minutes.
All right, so you can see this has been reduced to a really nice glaze that's going to stick to the meat.
Now, in traditional carnitas, they would fry the chunks of pork. It's sort of at a low temperature for a long time. Take it out, shred it, put it back in higher temperature oil, which is sort of what we're doing. We braised, took it out, and now we're going to broil it. So it's similar to that original recipe.
It is. All right, so we're going to dump this glaze on the meat. All right. Now, of course, remember we didn't trim a lot of that fat away because the fat adds valuable flavor. But now's the point where it gets a little greasy. So spread the meat with the glaze on it right onto the rack. Gosh, that smells good. You want to spread it to a pretty even layer because you want the crisp edges. That's really what carnitas is half about. It's the flavor of the pork and those crispy edges. Again, that broiler's been heating up since we took the pork out of the oven, so it's nice and hot.
Now that looks like a long way from the broiler.
But it's okay, because you really want to get an even crispness. If you're too close to the broiler, you just get the tips burned.
Okay.
So these have been broiling for about 5 or 8 minutes. We're just gonna flip them over so they get nice and crispy on the second side. Oh, they smell good. All right, so we're gonna broil them on the second side for another 5 or 8 minutes to get that second side good and crispy. All right, so I'm gonna go check the carnitas we have under the broiler. Oh, yeah.
I can smell it from here.
Oh, it smells so good. While I'm finished scooping it thus, you want to take some of those toasted tortillas. And when you toast a tortilla, these are just corn tortillas. 2 ways you can do it. If you have a grill fired up, you can throw them on the grill for a minute or 2 each side. Or you can, if you have a burner, like a gas burner, you can just throw it right on the burner, just a little bit on each side till it gets a little charred. All right.
Here we go. You go ahead first.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's now a first in America's Test Kitchen. I let you actually go first. I always get the food first.
There you go. I like a little lime, and oh, I like a little onion.
I'm going naked just with lime, yeah.
I like a little cilantro too.
Now, this is one of our top 10 recipes among people in the test kitchen. I thought it was like a stupid concept because it seemed like a lot of work. Actually turned out to be not that much work, and it's fabulous.
Oh, yeah.
So the secrets to Mexican pulled pork was braising, not frying, which makes a lot of sense. For about 2.5 hours, we used some oranges, some lime juice to get a nice sauce. Take the meat out, shred it, and then reduce that sauce down to a glaze over the pork, under a broiler, and finish it. You get the nice crispy edges that Julia likes so much. So from America's Test Kitchen to your kitchen, a knock your socks off recipe from carnitas, Mexican pulled pork. Delicious and not that difficult. And what taste? It's one of our top 10 recipes of all time here in the Test Kitchen.